Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for frame rate is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
Frame Rate is brought to you by MailRoute.info. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that provides enterprise-grade virus and spam filtering to companies of any size. Try it right now absolutely free at MailRoute.info.
He's trying to knock icicles off of his gutters.
It's Frame Rate! Welcome to Frame Rate. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Brian Brushwood.
And this is the show in which we talk about television and movies.
I was about to say, in which we take an extraordinarily long time to get things started. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing good. It was great to see you out in Las Vegas for CES.
Oh my gosh, I finally watched the coverage of us on the central floor, and I love that time warp effect because while it was like somewhat fun spending an hour and a half walking the floor, seeing that condensed down to just 30 minutes of us zipping from place to place, that was a heck of a lot more fun. Don't actually walk the floor. Just watch us walk the floor.
No, I said this before we went to CES, and I only believe it even more now. The best way to experience CES is to sit at home with a drink and maybe a fireplace and a pet or a loved one and just watch. Because then your feet don't hurt, you're not in a cab line, you're not racing around with your brain leaking out of your ears because you've been trying to absorb way too much all day. You just get the best of it.
You know what else you don't get when you sit at home is you don't have that perpetual feeling that you're missing something more awesome somewhere else. It's like you ever be at a party and you're in with somebody who's maybe on the drugs and they're always there, they're talking to you, but they always have the shifty eyes, they're always looking over their shoulder to find out where the action is. That's how it felt like all of CES. No matter where you were, you felt like something better was happening elsewhere.
Yeah, and the drugs. Like, just the feeling of it because you're like up all the time.
Yes,
exactly. The late hours.
So I guess we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff we saw at CES, but I guess you just want to jump right in with the big story?
Well, yeah, let's start with the big story.
This just in, the big story.
Will never, ever get unfunny to me. It will never cease to always rope me in because it's just the right amount of delay and you think something's wrong. So what's the big story?
Well, you and I were in the PowerMat booth and we were trying to race through looking at the new PowerMat stuff where they've integrated it into cars and airport seats and offices and all of this kind of stuff for wireless charging of your devices. And we're like, well, we got to get going because Darth Vader is going to be on at 11:30 at the Panasonic booth. We got to find out what he's going to say. And of course, it was a person dressed as Darth Vader. But I thought at the time it might be the real Darth Vader. Anyway, so we get over there, and it's what, 11:35?
Oh, yeah, we were standing there no later than 11:36, 11:37, thinking, okay, they haven't started yet. Good, because there was still a giant crowd there. And meanwhile, they're like, oh, yeah, no, it's over. So not only did they start on time, but the whole presentation was, what, 6 minutes long?
It can't have been very long because we didn't even see traces of stormtroopers or anything.
No, and that's the difference between CS and Dragon Con. Man, if we were at Dragon Con, they would have done that right. That's for dang sure.
But anyway, the big announcement was that Star Wars is coming to Blu-ray. Available for pre-order now on Amazon.
Which just, man, I never thought I'd be this old fogey, but it's like, I don't want to watch no polluted Greedo shirt shooting first fake thing. It's like, I don't know. I can't believe it happened. I feel so betrayed by George Lucas that I don't even care. And I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. Deep inside me, a second grade Brian feels so betrayed and so angry. at what's happened with the sequels and or the prequels and what continues to happen with this perpetual re-release of well, this one, we painted Yoda blue for this one. It's totally different. It's a wacky version. And so I don't want to pay again for the same material a million other times, especially since there'll be some other version that's got another slight difference in 20 minutes.
You know, what's getting me right now is that I'm actually very nervous about Jason showing this footage, even though it's a trailer of Blu-ray, because they're so litigious at Lucasfilm. I'm like, cut it off for a little bit before we just want to show the part about where they say Blu-ray, or else we'll get sued.
We need to, every time we mention lightsaber, say trademark up in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's coming in September to all various outlets, but you can pre-order it already on Amazon, and I am probably going to buy it.
Are you really? You don't feel the slightest bit suckered, or what's going to happen?
No, I feel entirely suckered. The thing is it's going to be like, here it is on Blu-ray. Now here's the original version on Blu-ray.
Well, and that's
2 years later. Now
thing.
Here's the 3D version on Blu-ray. Now George Lucas is dead, and we're putting it all back out again in a memorial set.
Oh my gosh!
Now here's the 3D original version on Blu-ray.
I'll tell you what. On the one hand, it's like I'm very, very frustrated, but on the other hand, what a testament to a story that has resonated with the world, where they could get away with that, and that people haven't given up on the series yet, or they're not. I wonder where we are as far as our love for Star Wars, if we're trickling down to where we're going to need to see a reboot of the franchise.
Now here it is on 4K. Sorry,
4K 3D.
That one took a little while longer.
Yeah. So you're doing an accurate timeline based on how long it's going to take for each of the updates. Okay. No, I feel you. Well, so I don't know. Yeah. Do you want it? I'll tell you what I love, and I mean this sincerely. And I honestly am so clouded with my judgment because I watched the original trilogy again with my daughter, and she really loved it. I will not let her watch the prequels just because, number one,
because you're afraid she'll like it.
Makes sense. Because what?
Because you're afraid she'll like it, and then you'll be so disappointed in your daughter.
What? I'm not going to lie. It's like I ain't going to have no daughter because then she's going to have to sleep in the alley back behind my house. I ain't going to have no lover of the prequels sleeping under my roof. But it's weird. Like, I don't know how much my frustration is based in the betrayal of what the prequels were compared to what I wanted them to be or what they could have been. And I don't know how much of it is this perpetual money grab over and over again for minor changes and the slow release to more badass stuff. There's so much more interesting things happening in the fan fiction and the fan movies of Star Wars than there is in the actual Star Wars universe. And when that happens, it makes me want to reward the fans, the people who actively love the material enough to create new art with it. And it makes me want to punish the people who are just trying to squeeze another freaking $100 out of me for some Blu-rays. Although, how much is it? Do we know how much it is?
Well, I think it's like $130, and then it's available on Amazon for $90 for the complete saga for all 6 movies. And then they are selling, interestingly enough, the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy separately from each other for less.
Well, that's probably a smart thing because I have a feeling there's a significant number of people who would just like one of those two.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I will tell you what strangely makes me feel really, really good about watching the prequels. Like, the moments I feel the happiest for having watched the prequels are when I listen or watch the Red Letter Media reviews of The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, because they are, number one, almost as long as the movies themselves, and number two, much more entertaining than the movies themselves. It is phenomenal. Have you watched the latest one? I know you've seen some of the previous ones, right?
Oh, the Red Letter Media stuff? Yeah, absolutely. I watched the first 2, and I've started watching this one, but I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, how far along into it did you get?
Not very far, like maybe 10 minutes in.
Okay, well, I've got a clip I wanted to play with it, but I don't know if it's going to try to pre-roll some. Was Jason able to grab it?
Yeah, I have it on the wrong computer, the one that doesn't play the media. I can pull it up.
Well, the good news is it is playing the pre-roll right now, which will take like 30 seconds, but it's able to mute. Sometimes the pre-roll just blasts it out, and now it screws everything up. But I'm going to play for you a couple of my favorite moments because not only does he set up a backstory to this bizarre, twisted character who does the reviews, but his insights are just so dead on. It's amazing to me.
Now, the Phantom Menace I discovered in the early days of when we were doing Current Geek, and I was just blown away. It was the best thing ever. It was so, some of it's just goofy and funny, but some of it is just really dead on insight into the problems of the film. I felt like his review of Attack of the Clones was good, but it didn't surpass Phantom Menace. I can't tell this early in. Now, you've watched the whole thing. How do you feel about it?
Completely agree with you 100%. And I'm going to say not only because the first one, so much of the Phantom Menace review that we loved about it was the definite groundbreaking nature of it. To have somebody so hostile and so funny and so long was a new thing that I don't think any of us had seen before. Attack of the Clones, it felt a little bit familiar because you could tell it was hitting some of the same beats. But the third one, man, it's his magnum opus. It is the ultimate movie review. Here, I've got a little bit of it right here. Let me go ahead and turn this up right here so we can hear him talking about.
Here we go. Get it the way you want it.
He seems to just view actors as a tool, like a computer or a prop. You know, sometimes an actor can bring a whole new level to a scene that you didn't imagine in the first place. But in the prequels, there's a very clear line of distinction between the actor scenes and the special effects scenes. The action scenes can be animated in any way possible. There's a lot of good action in this movie, I guess. When you animate all sorts of shit, the camera can move around unrestricted and things generally move faster in a more visual way. These action scenes would be really neat if we knew or cared about what was happening. I mean, Obi-Wan's riding around on a dinosaur trying to hit a lizard who's inside a robot suit with the stick with electricity on the end, while the lizard in the robot suit is riding around on a giant robotic hamster wheel. But when it comes to the dialogue scenes between characters, it's a whole other story. The scenes typically have the blocking of a soap opera, something that's shot for efficiency reasons rather than artistic. They are so dull and unimaginative, it's almost a contradiction given the amazing environments they're set in. Film is a visual medium, and Lucas is praised for being a pioneer of film visuals because he revolutionized special effects. The irony is now when he's given two humans and some dialogue, it's a boring disaster on film. It's fairly apparent he just wants to get these scenes out of the way to get us back to the action. But in a film that's primarily a character study, apparently, is that really the way to go? Most of the dialogue scenes are done one of two ways. Either characters walking somewhere or people sitting down, usually on a couch. The story is so bland and uninteresting, what people are saying usually doesn't connect to the environment they're in anyways. They could be anywhere, really.
I was so worried about you.
When we have a scene that starts with characters walking, they'll usually slow down and then stop. Then we'll go to what's called shot, reverse shot. Basic over-the-shoulder camera angles of two people talking to each other. This is the most basic and simplistic way to shoot dialogue scenes. Now to spice it up, at almost the exact same moment in a scene when the shot, reverse shot starts to get boring, a character will walk away and go over to a window and then look out the window.
When you say, I want more, but I know I shouldn't, you can turn away.
Lucas broke new ground by giving Natalie Portman some business during a scene and having
anyway, that's and he's
teaching film school.
I mean, he is, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when he plays, like he goes on later, he does this whole litany talking about like all the couch.
Citizen Kane.
Sorry about that. About all the couches that they're sitting on a couch, and it's true. Like instead of actually showing us stuff. You just hear people talking about stuff. And one of my favorite moments is he takes a moment and says, like, for example, that scene in Empire Strikes Back, when the one commanding officer comes in and he sees, what's his name, Darth Vader in the oxygen chamber. It is a revolutionary scene because the only information being carried is, hey, we're chasing after the rebels, but they appear to be in some kind of asteroid field. But they crafted this scene where you see Vader as a fusion of man and machine. You see him vulnerable. You see him inside his private space. And it makes it so much more an interesting character. And you don't get any of that storytelling with the prequels. I mean, this is so amazing.
George Lucas did such a good job directing Empire Strikes Back. It just makes me.
Wait.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Irvin Kershner, rest in peace, of course.
Never mind. So okay, this sounds like this version, this review goes back and surpasses even the first one in its ability to teach you something about film. I felt like I learned something about film watching his review of The Phantom Menace. I didn't feel that way about Attack of the Clones. But this one, he obviously is doing a whole tutorial there on, hey, you know what? If you shoot your film like TV news, it isn't very interesting.
Well, and he also talks about like the heavy use of green screening, and oh man, does he grab some damning footage. Every shot when he goes back to George Lucas is George Lucas leaning back in front of computer screens with his coffee. And so meanwhile, it creates, because you're dealing with green screen, you rob the actors of opportunities to discover natural emotion and natural reactions. And the scene he keeps showing in the review is this scene when right in front of him, General Grievous busts out his forearms, whips out 4 lightsabers, and whips them all around Obi-Wan's face. And Obi stands there blankly, not even blinking, and which is, of course, what he's supposed to do, because the director tells him, George Lucas is like, well, he's gonna whip out some lightsabers, and you just wait for him to be done to say your lines. He also goes through and talks about how he's not an actor's director. It's a damning piece of work I'm not going to say George Lucas in general. I mean, I think we all thank him for creating the property as he did, but certainly on his efforts with the prequels.
Well, I made the joke about directing Empire Strikes Back, but let's be honest, George Lucas did direct very good movies. Star Wars, the original, when it wasn't called A New Hope.
Absolutely.
And American Graffiti. Even THX 1138 is an entirely visual movie. And what happened to him?
Well, that's one of the things. I mean, to be honest, it depends on what fanboy you ask. It's like some of my friends are like, well, he got kids and he got soft and he just wanted to, because I have heard that during all of the prequels, he was absolutely off duty by 5 o'clock every single day. Like, he wanted to make the movies, but he wanted to make them as comfortably as he possibly could. But that's the bitter irony, is the exact kind of revolutionary filmmaking techniques that he created 30 years ago are his stuff is so very, very standard and predictable and uninteresting now, which is, I mean, that's the painful part. Did you know that and it's like, I think back to the mid 90s when I was reading with so much enthusiasm the idea of the prequels, and there was a brief while when Irvin Kershner was weighing in on what he does and doesn't want to do. Irvin Kershner mentioned in an interview that the touch at the end of Return of the Jedi, when they unmask Darth Vader, that was a Lucas decision, and Kershner was like, I never would have done that, never would have given up that mystery. And apparently there was talk about whether or not Kershner wanted to direct them, and what a bummer that he just said, he's like, I'm too old now, I'm just I'm taking it easy. Which is, just think about the movie that could have been. Somebody who understands the importance of mystery, who, I will sit around the campfire and talk with my friends thinking about the movies that might have been. What if Darth Vader and every character that showed up for maybe 5 minutes in the background during the Clone Wars, and you got to meet a whole new cast of fascinating characters instead of this parade of, here's a licensed property that you know and love, and we're going to parade them around in front of you. There's so much that could have been, and I think that's a lot where my anger comes from.
Yeah, I think it's because you sort of feel mad that someone created something so wonderful and then coasted to a finish. And maybe that's the thing, when you start to get old, you start to lose a little bit of that passion for what you're doing, and like you say, you punch the clock. You sort of think, well, I'm good at this. I know what's going on. I'm going to make. Oh, it's 4:30.
Yeah. Well, you get that syndrome where, and again, this is another thing that they do on you really are getting a soda, aren't you? Okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
On the Red Letter
I still
Media.
have passion for podcasting. Damn it.
Which, by the way, anyone who hasn't seen it, definitely go ahead and see it. Just if you Google Red Letter Media, their website is a little bit loud to navigate, but you'll find plenty of blogs where they link all 3 parts of it. Another thing he did on this review that I think was really interesting are there's some very obvious media buys in it where he's doing a sponsor read, but I was not surprised that the sponsor reads turned dark or even hostile to the sponsors. I was surprised at the severity of it and of the starkness of it. And it made me wonder if the sponsors necessarily knew what they were in for. They probably did, but like he does some dark stuff on the sponsor reads. On NSFW, we kind of goof off on the sponsor reads a little bit. This was dark, weird stuff.
Yeah, and that struck me in the first one when he did the Phantom Menace. How sort of it took it to a place that you weren't sure you were comfortable with anymore. But then you're so enjoying his review that you're just like, you know what, fine, whatever. I'm just gonna go with it. Maybe what we should do is have someone who is very into video on the web do a review of Red Letter Media's reviews.
Oh, that would be hilarious. We could start it off like you and me. We start playing clips of it. We're like,
the one thing about Red Letter Media reviews is they actually are very full of good information.
That's right. They're like, Red Letter Media's review of Revenge of the Sith was the least disappointing thing I'd encountered since the last Red Letter Media review. I mean, if you're going to have wicked insight, you might as well have cutting-edge visuals to go along with it.
I guess if you're going to be on the internet, you have to say shocking things that are rather dirty and repulsive. That's the only way to get views, I guess.
But the difference is he uses them as a hook to draw you in for some important insights. I wish George Lucas had seen. Do you think George Lucas has watched him?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Way.
I absolutely think he had.
George
you know
Lucas
what? He probably hasn't watched the last two. I am sure in my heart that he has watched the first one. And he may not have made it all the way through.
Yeah, exactly.
George Lucas totally strikes me as the type of person that would curate his own reality. And he would reach a gateway and ask, do I really want to fill my head with this? What's the benefit?
I think he would have been able to he wouldn't have been able to resist because there's so much buzz around it that he would have wanted to look. I'm not sure if he could look all the way to the end, though.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? In the chat room, somebody pointed out that when he first began, George Lucas was poor and hungry, but now he's got, with the prequels, more money than God. And there was a fantastic article in Wired Magazine about why Duke Nukem Forever failed. And the analysis of the author was that because they had so much money from Duke Nukem 3D and the sequels to it, they could afford to keep on tweaking until it was perfect. But the problem is with video game releases is that the engines age rapidly, and by the time they got closer to perfection, they had already their engine was out of date and they had to jump again. And that it was that lack of scarce resources. It was that lack of a deadline that caused the show or caused the game to never quite come out. And I wonder if it was a similar situation with the prequels because
that's why I left CNET.
Oh, really?
I didn't want to have all that wealth they were pouring on me, take away my hunger.
You're like, I want to create podcasts that will stand the test of time. That'll be revolutionary, that people will remember forever. Right here on the
No, keep your riches. I'm going elsewhere.
CBS dollars, your CNET cents. I'm going.
I sold my razor and I struck out to Petaluma.
You grabbed a sword and a laser. Is that what you said?
No, I said I sold my razor.
Oh, I like it. I like to believe you grabbed a sword and a laser and struck out
the sword, laser, sold my razor, and struck north. One man alone, walking the earth.
Yeah, I think that's all I got as far as comments on. Please watch the Red Letter Media thing because what I've found is nobody disagrees with him. Yeah, like the worst people will say is like, oh, well, I mean, he's right, but
I didn't like the nasty parts. Yeah. Or Revenge. He acknowledges Revenge of the Sith is often considered to be the best of the three prequels, and we've already said I've seen people in chat rooms saying that, and he acknowledges that. He's like, I guess it is, but still has problems. So,
but oh man, when you hear him talk about the importance for context, and it's like to have all these dazzling visuals, and especially that first 10 minutes of the movie, when it's visuals that put the entire first trilogy to shame. But I'm so upset because I have no idea who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. There's no context. I just don't know who to care. Or something amazing will happen, and I'm like, oh, that's good question. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, let's say we have no other big stories, do we?
I don't know. I mean, we could talk a little bit about the stuff on CES. You want to throw together another big story, or you just want to?
I guess it's time for another big story.
Stop everything. It's another big story
Apparently,
stop everything.
Another big story involves creating a bong out of glass.
Creating a what?
I don't know. It looks like he's doing some sort of glassware for smoking.
Oh, you're talking about the visual on there. I'm not going to lie. I heard my kids and dogs making noise downstairs, so I just jumped up to lock the studio door during that brief respite that I had. So we saw an awful lot of 3D, and I got to admit, like after everybody rolled their eyes at 3D last year, I did not think 3D would be the hype machine that it was this year, but it was so much worse. There was glasses free 3D. There was different types of glasses free 3D. There's active glasses, passive glasses. There was 3D sound. It was 3D bonanza. It was like we lived in a 3D world or something there.
Yeah, it was like the world was in 3 dimensions.
No, it's like we all had width and depth and height.
It was ridiculous. I knew there would be 3D there. I knew it was going to be there, but I still didn't think that they would push it as hard as they did this year. And it was like, hey, you didn't like 3D in a television? Well, let's put it in everything. We got it in laptops, and we got it on game machines and in smartphones. Actually, I didn't see a smartphone with 3D, but that'll be there next year.
Mm-hmm. I guarantee it. I mean, especially once the Nintendo 3DS comes out, the success of that device may shape the future of 3D smartphone technology.
Just
much
the fact
as that pains me to consider.
Just the fact that we're talking about 3D is making me a little nauseous.
I'm 3D'd out. I'm 3D'd out, and the technology is so not where it needs to be. I mean, the biggest reaction I was able to get from 3D on anything was looking at being like, oh yeah, no, it is. This is like that didn't happen with color. That didn't happen with high def. With 3D, like, oh no, I guess it is in 3D. That's not.
The glasses-free 3D was the only thing that I was like, okay, this is worth taking a look at. And it's not there yet. It just is not there. They can do it, but they can't do it well.
Chat room says this is the old man grumpy hour frame rate today. And I guess it is. Maybe, you know what it is?
Get off my lawn.
When you're there in the booth and someone's demoing the technology, I feel like it's like, all right, well, let's have the experience. But then it's like you go to the back room and then you all whisper and roll your eyes. That's what this is. This is our opportunity to just vent. It's just like, look, somebody out there I'm sure is excited for 3D, but man, is it not me now.
Well, I'm actually excited for 3D, but I don't want to have to wear glasses. I want it to look good, and I don't want it to cost me an arm and a leg. And we are 5 years away from that. I mean, they're going to have to iterate and iterate and iterate. I've been trying to figure out exactly where in the timeline, but this is equivalent to HD in the late 90s, I think. It's there, it exists, but it's just not right. The weird thing is, unlike HD, you don't have to differentiate and say, well, you can either buy a tube TV or you can buy an HD TV. With 3D, you can just start putting it in all the HD TVs, and that's what they've been doing. And I think within a year, everyone's going to have, and everyone who's buying a new TV is going to have 3D TV already, but they're not going to use it because there's not going to be that much programming for it.
You know what? I wonder if it's a compromise thing because the way it was with high def was nobody wanted to make high def content until they knew there would be a high def install base. Same thing with color televisions and stuff. Maybe this is a way to goose the creation of 3D content. So it's like, let's say in 5 years, every television between now and 5 years from now, every single one has the ability to do active shutter 3D on it. So then at some big convention, someone's able to say, do you realize the install base of 3D televisions is over 80 million units? That's a lot of households that can do high quality 3D stuff. So then maybe around this time, everyone's like, well, it doesn't cost that much more to make 3D, although I don't know if that's true. It seems like it would be a significant cost increase to make stuff in 3D. And then maybe, just maybe, right around then we'll get the breakthrough that makes glasses free, high quality 3D possible. I don't know though. I'm not believing it.
Was it you who were saying you want holograms?
Well, certainly, yeah. I want real 3D. I want no fake 3D. And the glasses stuff is very, very focused. You have to stand in a very specific sweet spot. There is technology where they're working on eye tracking, but boy, is it not where it needs to be. It couldn't even recognize Tom Merritt as a human being.
That's because I'm an alien, but
it's the beard.
Yeah,
it's very confusing.
It probably was the beard. That's what I think, and it's just not It's just not there yet. It can't. It was like, nope. That's not a face. It's covered by some thick pelt of something.
This is a dog. You put a Schnauzer Terrier in front of it. I'm not giving you.
We don't recognize pets on this 3. That was Toshiba's laptop 3D without glasses, where it had the eye tracking, and that was a cool thing when you were using it, because you could move your head.
It still was not nearly as precise as it needs to be. You were able to see constant ghosting on the edges. I thought it was interesting as a proof of concept of what we might see in the future, especially because Microsoft is talking about technology that allows it to track simultaneously up to 4 pairs of eyes and adjust the 3D on the fly. But there's a definite major lag. I mean, we're easily 5, maybe even 10 years from it looking like the way we want 3D to look. I think we got a long way to go.
How many people have 4 pairs of eyes anyway?
You know what? That's a good point. Speaking of 4 anything, I'd be much more excited about 4K displays or, of transmission standards running at 120 frames per second or something. Like that would be such a better intermediate step. I think the technology does not exist yet and won't exist for a while to make a satisfying 3D experience. So I don't even know why they're wasting our time right now.
Because they know they can sell it. That's why. By golly. And as long as they can sell it, they're going to put it in there. Everybody, they were starting. In fact, this is the first year that LCD TVs will decline in shipping. They're expecting, and so they need something to goose that number. They need something to make you go, oh, well, maybe I need to replace that TV. I think internet connectivity is much more compelling in that respect than 3D. But all right, time to talk about our sponsor, MailRoute, mailroute.info, whether you're 1 person or 50,000. If you want to stop spam in your business or in your home, mailroute.info provides a way to do that I am using right now.
You know what's great, Tom?
What's that?
Is that this particular sponsor means we do not have to break our grumpy old men streak because, I don't know about you, hate spam. And it's still getting through. It gets through on my Gmail. Gmail says that they got stop and spam filters, but it's just like, and the worst part is nowadays you even get spam from people you trust because they get their accounts hacked.
I've been giving out acedetected@brilliant.com on. I never give out email addresses because I'm afraid of getting a bunch of spam. But right. Here we go. I've got one from Beaky Ball 4 who's like, hey, I want to do a giveaway on TNT or something. Got one from Jeff. Saw a recent episode of iPad Today. He says, I have added your requested feature, email a CSV of starred articles, and would like for you to check it out. The app is FYI, and the blog is FYIapp.tumblr.com. That's awesome. I'm going to check that out, Jeff. That's exactly what I want to be able to do. Joey just says, thank you. Well, thank you, Joey. The Obama administration reportedly plans to create an internet ID for all Americans. This is a link forwarded by Ryan. It's not spam. And Tony wants to invite me to join him on Facebook. Also not spam. That's bacon. MailRoute doesn't stop bacon. MailRoute stops spam.
Is that the term? I haven't heard the term bacon. That's awesome.
Yeah, bacon is when it's stuff that you signed up for, but it's not unsolicited commercial email.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, theoretically, I might want to get that Facebook invitation. So there you go. acedetected@brilliant.com has been revived. This was a nightmare of an email account less than a year ago. 3 months ago, I could not use this email account. It was just too full of spam. But now I can use it again thanks to MailRoute. And if you would like to check it out, go to mailroute.info and sign up for the free trial. If you want to keep it, they have a couple of ways. If you're a business, you probably want to go the $2 per user per month for up to 10 users. And because of demand from the Twit Army for single users, for individual users, you can get it for less than $30 per user per year. Visit mailroute.info and sign up with the email filtering service that me and Leo use. Check them out, mailroute.info. Time now for some Film Found. Film Found, brought to you by MailRoute.
I love your simulated old-timey radio voice. You got to like, you're like, Ladies and gentlemen, are you a fan of film and found? Well, it's time for Film Found.
We want to pour a little out for our homie Peter Yates, director of Kroll, who passed away at age 81. Nice full life, but
it's really weird because the late 70s or the 70s in general was such a golden age for science fiction. And the 80s was such a weird age for science fiction when a lot of people regard it as schlocky times. But meanwhile, maybe because I was growing up during that time, I have such crazy positive memories of Kroll and of Time Bandits.
I don't think you're alone in that. I mean, it's... Oh, he's 82? This headline says 82. Some said 81. News companies can't do math.
Yeah, man. It's like I think there's it's its own unique flavor of early 80s sci-fi. And I think there was a lot of effects that they were trying out, a lot of things that suddenly became affordable that were never before. I'll tell you my real weak spot is, do you know what my secret shame, my favorite sci-fi movie to watch? Like if it's ever on, I'm watching the entire thing. I can quote extended passages from it.
What's that?
Flash Gordon.
Oh, yeah. He'll save every one of us.
Absolute favorites right there.
He's for every one of us. Fights for every one of us. He'll save with a mighty hand every man, every woman, every child with a mighty flash. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Everyone in the chat room is writing.
Movie.
That's awesome.
Like I actually learned on the guitar the chords, so I'd walk around to my 3-year-old daughter singing "Fights for every one of us."
So there's an article on Boing Boing. It's called Star Trek Positronic Heart of Darkness. Metafilter's James Duncan summarizes an incredible story treatment that was given for Star Trek Insurrection, the movie, and then was blanded out. He thought Star Trek kind of a Heart of Darkness take would have been good. He says, a quote from the pitch, "I came back to Rick Berman with a premise I called Heart of Lightness. I told him we'd be using a structure based on Heart of Darkness, but that the trip up the river would lead Picard and his crew on a very different kind of adventure. We open at Starfleet Academy in Picard's youth, establishing Picard as a curly-haired, high-spirited cadet. We give him a best friend, another cadet, who is as close to Picard as any man has ever been or ever will be. Flash forward to present day and find adult Picard being given a mission by Starfleet Command. His old friend is now a wanted man. He's been attacking ships in an unexplored region of space, and no one knows why. Picard has to track him down and, if necessary, kill him." Now compare that to Star Trek Insurrection and tell me which movie you'd rather see.
Oh my gosh. I mean, no doubt about it. Although I think I'm speaking for a significant number of our listenership. I don't know if it's an age thing or what, but I never saw Heart of Darkness. I'm not familiar with the story. The original was a Vietnam thing. Is that right?
Heart of Darkness was Joseph Conrad's novel, and it was used as the basis for Apocalypse Now.
Okay, what's funny is when you were describing the plot, the first thing I thought was, I don't know what Heart of Darkness is, and then as you described it, I'm like, well, that sounds like Apocalypse Now. I didn't realize that the two were the same thing. Oh, hells yeah, man, that would be phenomenal, especially following on the heels of Star Trek First Contact. Was an amazing. I guess Resurrection was 2 after that. There was that other lame one after First Contact. But regardless, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see it.
Apparently, Patrick Stewart was used as blame for this by Rick Berman when they decided not to accept this treatment. Rick Berman apparently said, "We begin to realize that Picard is getting younger, first psychologically and then gradually physically as well. We see that swashbuckling spirit of an earlier era revived in his heart. In other words, Picard's an old man who doesn't get to buckle his swash until the planet makes him young again. But he's our hero. When the movie's over and he goes back and he's back to normal again, he needs to be a vital man of action. Patrick will hate this. He'll never do it." And then says he didn't have a problem with the Fountain of Youth concept. He will when he reads this. You're telling our star he's an old man. If it's a Fountain of Youth story, he's got to get younger, I finally said. Then maybe it shouldn't be a Fountain of Youth story. I won't be able to sell this to Patrick. I guess I missed a part where he actually starts to get younger during the journey. I let out a deep breath. It was hard to disagree with Rick's prediction of Patrick's reaction. From the moment, I couldn't find a way around it. I have an idea, said Rick, pulling me out of my despair. What if the guy Picard finds on the planet is Data?
Okay.
In the story I've been reading this weekend, we are enmeshed in a context of Federation politics, fine interpretations of the Prime Directive, and ancient history as ancient as Star Trek, of conflict between two members of the Federation. In the middle of all this is a vaguely defined, characterless, uninteresting civilization who seem to have attended too many performances of Siegfried and Roy. This is Patrick Stewart's negative criticism. What I have read would have hardly composed a moderately interesting episode somewhere in the middle of season 5. Anyway.
The only thing the chat room is shouting is that on the subject of Patrick Stewart, and this is gives you a quick idea of how the internet is skewed. Is of course Patrick Stewart, Shakespearean actor, and his whole time on Star Wars, he was part of the X-Men franchise as far as film goes. The only thing the chat room wants to shout about is how awesome he was in his 3-minute bit on Extras on the HBO series. Did you ever see that?
No, I haven't seen that. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. He plays the greatest creepy lech ever, where he's obsessed with, and I don't want to ruin it. Just go to, it's up. I've got it right in front of me on YouTube. Maybe we'll play it after the show. But it's just Google Patrick Stewart Extras. Look it up on YouTube. It is absolutely hilarious.
Now, we both watched True Grit over the holiday break. And this is really our first chance to talk about it. I thought, it's Coen Brothers movie, but I actually forgot it was a Coen Brothers movie while watching it. I just got sucked up into it as being a really interesting and true-to-life Western.
Did you... I totally forgot that it didn't feel like a Coen Brothers movie, did it?
Some of the dialogue when I was thinking back was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty Coen Brothers. But, yeah, during the movie, it did not stick out as some madcap Coen Brothers thing.
You know what I liked about True Grit is that when you think about it, it seems, I don't want to say it's a small movie, but it seems very specific in scope. All of the scenes, they don't go for very many of the scenes you associate with Westerns, these gigantic sweeping vistas where you can see for, hundreds of miles in every direction, and these wide open skies. It was a lot of, as they were traveling, and maybe it's because I live in Texas, I'd look and be like, oh yeah, no, that looks kind of like out behind my house. It
right.
seemed very, very authentic to me.
Yeah, I agree. And the way the girl acted and the way she was treated seemed likely. I don't know if that in that period of time that's exactly what would have happened, but it wasn't sort of a fairy tale where, in the John Wayne version, which is a classic, it is a little fairy tale, and it's supposed to be. Those are larger than life characters. These were basically the opposite. Instead of larger than life characters, you had very human characters carrying out this story.
I tell you what, and again, if you live within 1,000 miles of Austin, Texas, you got to make a pilgrimage to the Alamo Drafthouse, because they always curate the clips they play. They don't do any advertisements until the lights go down. And so instead what they do is they have very carefully curated clips, and you don't know why you're watching these clips. And oftentimes you will end up getting an inadvertent education on the movie beforehand. For example, when I didn't read a lot of Batman comics, and so when I went to go see the original Batman Begins, it was neat because before the movie I was like, oh, how cute, they're playing a bunch of Batman cartoons. Well, all the Batman cartoons were about the Scarecrow, and then when it turned out that was the big villain in the movie, it was I was like, oh good, I've got the background on this character. Likewise, they showed a few clips of the original True Grit.
Oh, that's cool.
Especially the ones that you could tell that were remade in a new imagining. For example, the scene where he's giving a deposition on the stand, talking about how many people he shot in his service as a U.S. Marshal. The before and after, I haven't seen all of True Grit, the original at all, but the scenes I saw, this thing had the old one dusted. I mean, the old one felt a little bit like a cartoon compared to the Coen Brothers telling.
Well, the old one is very much a movie of its time. It's a big Hollywood blockbuster with the sweeping vistas you're talking about. But at the time, it was the best one that they had done. It is it is one of the examples of that genre, of that type of movie. So what the Coen Brothers did was an entirely different take, an entirely different way of doing a Western.
So a while ago, I mentioned that I was sick, and one of the things I did was I watched all of Lonesome Dove from the 1980s because it's on Netflix streaming at the moment, and because it really holds up. Even though it was shot in the 80s, they did everything so period that it doesn't feel like it's almost 30 years old now. I got to tell you, my favorite part of True Grit was that flavor you described, that realism that you can believe that you're there in the Old West and you could believe this is really how they talked and how their day-to-days went, because it wasn't over the top with sweeping vistas, that kind of thing. It felt like yet another Lonesome Dove, a couple hours in that same world. I mean, it really, if you dug True Grit, man, you could do worse than spend a day watching the original Lonesome Dove, because it's very much a similar flavor.
If you like True Grit, you'll also like Lonesome Dove, the miniseries.
We've turned into Netflix recommendations.
Yeah,
that's going to be our bit to try to. I guess that $1 million contest is over, but it's like just let me and Tom make all the recommendations. Personally, we'll do better.
Slashdot had a posting up that NASA and the Science and Entertainment Exchange have compiled a list of the least plausible science fiction movies ever made, and they ranked the disastrous 2012 as the most absurd sci-fi flick of all time. And
Did you watch 2012?
I loved 2012. Are you kidding me?
But I have not seen it because the premise sounded so ridiculous that I couldn't get into it. I didn't think it would be the kind of thing that could suck me in because his premise was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I went to it. I'm first of all, disclaimer. I'm a fan of disaster porn. So all of those horrible sci-fi weekend movies about, the cloud of nanites attacking Seattle, all that stuff with horrible dialogue, horrible acting, and no script. I love those. I don't. It's like watching cartoons for me. It's not supposed to be good. It's a good kind of bad for me. And so 2012 to me was Roland Emmerich's homage to all of those kinds of movies. It was the most ridiculous movie taken to an extreme.
You felt it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, where it's just like, hey, man, this is what you want. I'm going to give it to you straight.
Show me the Vatican knocking over. Show me an aircraft carrier smashing into the White House. Show me Las Vegas being sucked down into a whirlpool hole and Los Angeles actually sliding into the ocean, just like everyone always jokes. I got to see all of that in 2012.
So I am looking at the rest of the list here, and I don't know if I'm ashamed or confused or what, but number one, it says NASA's Hall of Shame includes Armageddon, starring Bruce Willis, which, no lie, was the first ever movie I went to the rental store with the intention of watching, came home, put the VHS in, got halfway through it, and was so insulted and so angry about the way they were treating me that I turned it off and returned it. It was so bad that I couldn't even finish, and that had never happened before. I was angry at the lack of respect it gave me, and maybe because it was also right after Deep Impact, which of course was very.
I had the exact same experience where I watched Deep Impact in the theater and loved it, and it was mentioned in Scientific American about how they had really tried to consult about how this would really go down, and then I watched Armageddon, and I was at that point. And this may be that point when I started my love of these kind of movies. I was at that point where I was about to be upset too, and I said, but you know what? They weren't trying to make that movie. They weren't trying to make Deep Impact. And I may be disgusted by the fact that they just try to road in and like, screw science, but there's something pretty amazing about these explosion scenes, and maybe I can derive some enjoyment out of that.
Well, and I will say years later, I ended up watching it because my mom was watching and I was in the room. And once I was, steeled for the betrayal against science, it was much more palatable. But at the time, I hated it. So that one, I believe should be on the list.
I put right in there Volcano in the same position with Dante's Peak.
That's the other thing. Like Volcano, I thought was pretty good. I mean, it's like, granted,
Did you see Dante's Peak?
No. It was Dante's Peak was better.
Go and recreate that experience sometime. Watch Dante's Peak. And then watch Volcano, because I did the exact same thing. It's exactly like watching Deep Impact and then Armageddon.
Oh, what a bummer. Although, I don't know. I mean, it's like maybe I was just in the right frame of mind for Volcano. It was silly and outrageous, but, I don't know. La Brea Tire Pits, why not? Maybe that is a big old volcano right there. Who knows?
All right, The Sixth Day and Chain Reaction are the other two listed here. I have not seen either one of those, so I can't.
Yeah, me neither.
I can't render judgment. All right.
NASA had cooperated. This is interesting. NASA had cooperated with film projects in the past, but it also regretted helping some of them. One example was 2003's The Core, starring Hilary Swank, about a team who drills into the center of the Earth.
That was a ridiculous movie.
Slowing.
I still liked it because of the ridiculous. That one was one where I liked it because it just kept getting more and more ridiculous. Like, wait,
what could make this stupider? Oh, that's what they're doing now.
Yeah. Did they name the best sci-fi film?
And why don't they? I don't understand why they didn't. I'm looking at all the trailers right now.
The title here.
You mean Slashdot teased it that way?
Yeah. Now wait a minute.
I believe that they did though. It may have been Gattaca actually. Let me see.
Okay, here we go.
Most realistic.
Gattaca was named as the most realistic.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what they say about Blade Runner. I see the theatrical trailer here. But Gattaca is a phenomenal movie, and how bizarre. I remember watching it at the time, and I don't know what it is that always grates against me, but whenever somebody offhandedly mentions a year in the future, like, hey, remember the old 2015 Cabriolet? Well, that car was stupid and old. But damned if watching the movie 15 years after it happens, when he says, I forget what the car was, but he's like, remember the old 1999 blank? And he was explaining away the scars that he had on his legs from some surgery. It's interesting. I love watching stuff that's supposed to take place in the future and to see what ages well and what does not. What seems outrageous and hilariously stupid. I am shocked at how well Back to the Future 2 has aged as far as its accuracy and prediction. There's like 3 or 4 things that it got totally wrong, but other stuff I was just like, well, that's pretty much dead on.
All right, let's move it along to Tube Tops. That is the snappiest of our intros. Doctor Who's David Tennant is going to marry Georgia Moffat. Now, she happens to be the real daughter of Peter Davison, a previous Doctor Who.
I remember Peter Davison, yeah. He was the one after Tom Baker, right?
Yeah. And she played the daughter of Doctor Who that is created on this world in a David Tennant episode where David was Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is marrying his daughter. Doesn't matter how you look at it.
This is such a Doctor Who fan story. This is the kind of thing that in no way bothers or raises eyebrows or anyone even notices who is not a crazy Doctor Who fan. But if you're into it, like just that idea, you get all wrapped up. You're like, oh, that's
here's the other side note to this. David Tennant has said that Peter Davison was his favorite Doctor growing up. That Davison was his Doctor. He was the Doctor he watched on TV and was a fan of. Can you imagine if, okay, you're David Tennant, you're a little boy, and you're like, I'm watching Doctor Who, Peter Davison is my favorite Doctor, and then all of a sudden, through some kind of technology, old David Tennant of modern day beams in and goes, hey, guess what? You're going to get to play the Doctor someday. And
dude, I think about that kind of thing all the time.
Guess what else? You're not only going to get to play the Doctor, but you're going to marry that Doctor's daughter. All right? See you later. Have a good life.
That kind of stuff happens. I guarantee you've had something like that happen in the world of podcasting where it's people that you have worshipped. I remember thinking that way when I was a kid. I used to play all the Ultima games, the Richard Garriott Ultima series. And then Richard Garriott turns out is a huge amateur magician, big magic enthusiast. And so he ends up being a Scam School fan. And then when he went to the International Space Station with Space Adventures 2 years ago, he did a Scam School trick on the International Space Station. And there's one of those moments where it's just like, I want to go back in time to little Brian Brushwood, 3rd grade, playing Ultima 3 Exodus and say, dude, Lord British, that guy, that character in that game, he's an actual guy. You're going to meet him, you're going to befriend him, and he's going to do a trick that you invented on the International effing Space Station. It's just like, I mean... that happens. I mean, you've had something like that happen, haven't you?
I can never think of stuff like that. I'm sure it has. But nothing compares to Doctor Who becoming Doctor Who and then marrying his Doctor Who's daughter. Who plays your actual Doctor Who's daughter on the Doctor Who TV show?
That's awesome. No, it's definitely awesome, dude.
That's crazy. I forgot about that Scam School trick being on ISS. That was pretty awesome, too. I have to admit. Now I'm jealous. I'm out of here. No, we have to.
Especially because I tossed to you saying like, well, you've got something like that, right? And you're like, moving on.
I don't know. I never meet any famous people.
Whatever.
Let's. What are you watching on TV? I just watched the season opener of V, and my evaluation is still very improved. It's improving all the time. There was some pretty bad dialogue still that they need to write better too. There's some plot holes that they're starting to tighten up. I liked the Red Sky thing. I thought that was cool, and I thought they resolved it well. But the killer is at the end. The woman who played Diana in the original V shows up as the modern-day Diana's mother. And that cool. Just was a big metal hook that went into my mouth and picked me up and said, "You're watching V for another 3 or 4 episodes."
I as you know, I gave up way earlier on that. I was not able to handle the cheese on there. But are you watching anything else?
I rewatched all of Sherlock over the break because Eileen, my wife, hadn't seen it, and she's like, "Well, I'm going to watch it."
Don't they?
Huh?
They hold up to multiple viewings.
Oh, like, absolutely.
I show them all to my in-laws.
Yeah, I picked up all kinds of things I hadn't noticed the first time through. Plus, the one thing I hadn't got around to was watching the pilot, which is essentially a Study in Pink but shorter. And so when I watched the pilot, I was trying to remember what things had changed from the pilot to the actual first episode. And so when she watched the first episode, I was like, "Oh, right, they don't have the whole thing with the text messaging at the beginning." And this is, so it was really fun. They hold up really well.
Yeah, I also watched all of Sherlock twice. Really enjoyed it. Really looking forward to. I assume. Do we have release dates on when the next set of short movies will come out?
Of Sherlock?
Yeah.
Yes, we do, and I don't remember them off the top of my head. Hold on, I'll find them.
Also, in anticipation of starting the Venture Brothers season 4, I went back and there were like 3 or 4 episodes that I had left dangling on season 3. I meant to get back to watching them, but I hadn't done so. So last night I watched the last 4 episodes of season 3, including the big cliffhanger with the surprise where they kill off a reasonably significant recurring character on the show. Which is another thing about the Venture Brothers that, I mean, they've got the gonads to keep making major changes repeatedly.
And then they also have no problem bringing back dead people if they need them.
Yes, yeah, but I mean, they change stuff pretty significantly.
Oh, yeah.
And they allow changes to sit for a very long time.
Yeah, for instance, example, Hank.
Like you think about all the people who live with Dr. Jonas Venture. They were all an established sets in their own base doing their own thing, and now they've just been integrated, and it's like, stuff changes, the relationship changes. It's a little bit of a soap opera or whatever, but really enjoying it. Really enjoyed I watched the first episode of season 4 against my wife's wishes. I told her it was for work, and I cannot say enough good stuff about the Venture Brothers. What I love about it is that it does not wait for you. It's going to make the joke and it's going to move on, and you either get it or you don't, and you're responsible for your own laughter, sir. We're busy advancing everything and moving very, very fast and making a hell of a lot of references that only a true cartoon sci-fi nerd is going to get all of them. And it really challenges me, and I love it.
Sherlock will be coming out again in the fall. They say autumn 2011. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And shall we move on then to our first email, because it is about, I wanted to say, I have not watched the season finale of Caprica yet. I know it aired in Canada already a while back. They just aired it this week on Sci-Fi Channel, and I was at CES, so I have yet to catch up on that.
We should also, I'm going to assume that you have not watched The Cape yet?
No, I haven't watched The Cape, and then I heard that maybe I shouldn't.
Well, and now welcome to my world. See, to me, it was never a question. I was never going to watch the first episode of The Cape to begin with. It's like I looked at it and I was like, you appear to be handling caped heroes in a kind of cheesy fashion, so I don't trust you. So it's like, that's the kind of show that I will not watch until someone swears that, no, you got to get into it. So, but you seem like the type who definitely would have jumped in line.
If it hadn't been for CES, I probably would have. But DSM says, I saw the first 2 episodes of The Cape on Hulu. I found it to be mostly okay, but a little annoying. It felt like the creators tried to create a Batman-like character, but the main villain with the fake contact lenses is irritating, and The Cape's training, highly unbelievable. Given how quickly he becomes so proficient at everything, my main reason to watch the show was Summer Glau as one of the main characters, but her talents seem to be wasted. On the other hand, the premise of private military firms taking over domestic security seems very real and highly probable given what is happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. I will give the show a couple more chances, and I hope it will improve. I would love to hear your opinions. I will get. I may. You know what? After reading that email, I may go try to watch the pilot on Hulu. It's a web only though. If you're on Hulu Plus, you can't watch The Cape.
He's gone suddenly.
Can you believe that? He's so upset with that he just left.
I'm trying to dial him.
He just kicked out. And then just want to let you know there's some info out for Series 2 of Sherlock. I just watched the first series this week. Moffat gave 3 hints. He remains tight-lipped about what lies in store. You can have 3 words to work from, he laughs. Adler, Hound, and Reichenbach. Those are your clues. He also mentioned a bunch of stuff about Doctor Who. Geeks of Doom gave some really interesting commentary on the hints. They say you can deduce quite a bit from Moffat's 3-word clue. Here's my deduction. Adler means we'll meet Irene Adler. That makes sense. The only woman to ever outsmart Sherlock Holmes and to attract his interest. The character appeared in only one Holmes story, A Scandal in Bohemia, so either we'll get an episode based on that story, or like the Guy Ritchie, Robert Downey Jr. Film Sherlock Holmes, Adler will be inserted into an all-new adventure. Hound is a reference to the popular story Hound of the Baskervilles, while Reichenbach is Reichenbach Falls, where in The Final Problem, Holmes famously faces off with his arch nemesis, Professor Moriarty. So it sounds like we got our 3 episodes of the new Sherlock. I'll be eagerly awaiting the new series later in the year. Anthony, a.k.a. Strasbourg, in the chat realm. And also, yeah, somebody mentioned, do you watch Merlin? I do watch Merlin, and I know it's returning to Sci-Fi this month, so I'll probably see that. I have not seen Dirk Gently. I don't have any legal way to watch it here in the United States yet, unless I'm missing something. So we'll check that out. Anyway, we lost Brian, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up the show, and then if we get him back, we'll do a little more to edit in here. But here's your edit point. Thanks, everybody, for watching. You can email us, framerateshow@gmail.com, and we will see you next week. Bye.